Hey everyone, welcome to This Explainer. I'm absolutely thrilled you're joining me today because we're going to demystify one of the most fascinating invisible systems that literally powers our entire modern world. We interact with it every single day, yet we rarely stop to think about the incredible journey happening right in front of our eyes. I want you to picture a super everyday object, something simple like a flashlight. You press a button with your thumb and instantly, darkness turns into light. But what exactly is happening in that split second? Think for a moment about the invisible energy journey that silently bridges the gap between your mechanical effort and that glowing beam of light. I promise you, it's not magic. It's just a perfectly designed system. Okay, let's dive into our roadmap for today. We're going to cover, number 1, the invisible energy journey. 2, cells versus batteries. 3, lighting up with bulbs and LEDs. 4, building an electric circuit. 5, conductors, insulators, and safety. And finally, number 6, heating and magnetic effects. Let's get right into it. Part 1, the invisible energy journey. To really wrap our heads around this invisible journey, we're going to keep our focus entirely on that humble, everyday torch. Now, obviously, we know massive amounts of electricity are generated from giant sources. Think of the roaring water at the Bakra Nangal Dam. But for our explainer today, we are zooming all the way in on a portable powerhouse. The torch is perfect because it lets us hold that energy right in the palm of our hand to see the fundamental rules of electricity at a micro level. Moving on to part 2, cells versus batteries. Think about when you pop open the back of your TV remote. What's actually sitting inside there? We tend to use the words cell and battery interchangeably all the time, but scientifically speaking, there's a pretty big difference. An electric cell is just a single, solitary unit that converts chemical energy into electrical energy for lighter tasks. A battery, on the other hand, is a collection of these cells working together for heavy-duty, longer-lasting power. If you've ever accidentally put cells into a flashlight backwards, well, you know it's not going to turn on. They have to be placed in a very specific sequence. The positive terminal of one cell must connect directly to the negative terminal of the next one. When they're perfectly stacked end-to-end like that, boom, you've officially created a battery. And this whole concept scales up dramatically. Whether we're talking about the massive internal housing of a heavy-duty car battery or just a simple little plastic holder with metal springs for your everyday gadgets, they serve the exact same function. They house cells in sequence to combine their voltage and boost overall power. Part 3, lighting up, bulbs and LEDs. So how does that stored chemical juice actually transform into brilliant light? Well, the contrast between old and new technology here is super fascinating. Traditional incandescent bulbs use this tiny tungsten filament. Electricity literally forces its way through, heating that little wire until it glows white hot. But modern LEDs? They have no filament to burn out. They use highly efficient smart diodes. And if you're ever wiring one yourself, remember that polarity matters. The long leg must connect to positive and the short leg to negative. Part 4, building an electric circuit. Because let's be real, a fully charged battery and a brand new bulb just sitting next to each other on a table doesn't do a whole lot, right? They've got to be perfectly connected. And to map these connections, scientists use this almost secret visual language. It's actually a really fun puzzle to decode. A cell is represented by a long line next to a short, thick line. A bulb is a circle with a little loop inside. And a simple straight line, that's your wire. Once you master this alphabet, you can read pretty much any electrical diagram in the world. So, what's the actual recipe to complete this invisible journey? First, you need your power source, so your cell or battery. Second, a conductive path, which is usually a copper wire. Third, an output device, like our bulb. And fourth, and this is absolutely crucial, a closed switch. The circuit has to be a perfect, unbroken loop. Current flows out of the positive terminal, runs through the wires, goes through the device, and heads right back into the negative terminal. If there is even a millimeter of a gap anywhere, the journey stops instantly. This kind of homemade setup brilliantly illustrates that exact concept. You've got your cell, your wire, your bulb, and for the switch, just 2 drawing pins and a metal safety pin. This makeshift switch acts as the ultimate gatekeeper. With the pin bridging the gap, the loop is completely closed and the bulb glows. Nudge it away, the loop breaks, and the light vanishes. Simple as that. Part 5, conductors, insulators, and safety. This entire invisible journey we've been talking about relies totally on the physical materials we choose. Electricity is incredibly powerful, but it needs strict guidance. So, we divide materials into 2 main camps: Conductors, like copper and other metals, give current a free pass to flow. Insulators, like rubber, plastic, and glass, they act like a solid brick wall. That is exactly why we use copper for the inside of our wires. It's a fantastic conductor, but we intentionally wrap it in a plastic insulator to trap the electricity perfectly on its intended path.
And keeping that electricity trapped is vital for one major reason. The human body is an excellent conductor of electricity. Mishandling it is highly, highly dangerous. We've always got to respect the essential safety rules. Never touch switches with wet hands. Immediately toss and replace wires with damaged insulation. Don't overload your circuits by plugging in too much stuff. And please, keep any home science experiments strictly to safe low-voltage cells.
Part 6. Heating and magnetic effects.
As cool as lighting up a dark room is, electricity has a whole other bag of tricks. First up is the heating effect. When current really struggles to pass through high-resistance materials, like nichrome wire, that microscopic friction produces intense heat. We purposefully use this in electric kettles and space heaters, but interestingly, it's also a life-saving safety feature. Fuses contain a super-thin wire designed to intentionally melt if a circuit gets overloaded. It snaps the circuit open before a fire can start. It acts as a brilliant, sacrificial safety net. But honestly, perhaps the most magical property of all was discovered by a scientist named Hans Christian Ørsted. He realized that when an electric current passes through a wire, that wire begins to behave exactly like a magnet. By wrapping copper wire into a tight coil and running a current through it, we create an electromagnet. And the crazy part? The second you cut the power, the magnetism just vanishes. This temporary, totally controllable magnetism is what rings your doorbell, runs your electric motors, and even powers those giant cranes that lift crushed cars in junkyards. Which brings us right to the end of our explainer today. We've journeyed all the way from a single tiny cell inside a flashlight, decoded the secret language of circuits, and uncovered the heating and magnetic marvels that power our daily lives. Electricity is this invisible, strictly logical, yet incredibly powerful force flowing all around us. So the next time you casually flip a switch, take just a second to respect the amazing journey happening right behind the drywall. It makes you wonder, what other invisible forces in your daily life will you start looking for next? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and as always, stay curious.